Remember this wee system that we put together about a month ago? 486 DX2 clocked at 66 MHz, built into this nice mini AT case. We fitted a network card, 2 MB Visa local bus graphics, Super I/O card, and our Sound Blaster compatible sound card. That's our 16 MB of memory. And down in here is what I thought was 256k of write back cache. Following a comment on that video though, it turns out that cache might be fake. So I've just booted the system up into DOS here, and if we go into this Barks folder, because well the M button doesn't work on my keyboard, and load this little bit of software, then if we press P to get information on the processor, you can see that it confirms level 1 cache 8k, and that's what you would expect on a 486 DX2, but level 2 cache NA. If we then run this bit of software, cache check, and let it do its thing, you can see it also reports our 8k of cache that's on the chip. But it goes on to say, if you think you do have L2 cache, you might have fake cache chips. So what are we going to do? Well, first thing is we need to tear the machine down, get that motherboard out of there, and have a really good look around those fake cache chips to see if it's going to be possible to install real ones. So here's our motherboard in all its glory, with its absolutely beautiful looking white ISA slots, but that doesn't mean a lot when we've got fake cache chips. Last time when we were putting this machine together, I commented that it seems to be a UMC board because of the branding here on the chipset, but if you notice, that's a sticker. What we actually have here is a PC Chips M912 motherboard, very well known for its fake cache chips. And in fact, this might not be a UMC chip, because supposedly if you remove this, it's just an unbranded chip underneath. We're not going to be removing that, but I have found pictures online of this with that removed, and it's just some generic branding on the chipset, so God only knows what it is in reality. One good thing though in our favour is that there was a version of this motherboard made by PC Chips sold with real cache chips on here. And if we take a closer look, hopefully you can make out that the traces from these cache chips actually seem to run towards the chipset. In fact, if we look on the underside, you can maybe see that a bit clearer, that the traces here all collect and come down towards our controller here, our chipset, down here. So that makes me think that we can put real chips in here and they'll work. On some motherboards with fake cache chips, what you'll find is there are traces, but those traces just go in a loop around these chips just to make it look like something. They're not actually connected back to the rest of the motherboard. I found a copy of the manual for the version of this motherboard that does have the real cache chips installed, so we'll use that as a reference and guide for installing and setting up our real cache chips. I'll need to remove these jumper links here and over here and install proper pin jumpers so that we can configure our new cache properly. And I also really want to know what these chips are, so we'll pick one of them, cut it in half, and just see if there's anything in it. I mean, why would you go to the trouble of installing fake cache chips? Why wouldn't you just leave it blank or just put sockets in place? Who knows? Let's get the desoldering station out, get these removed, and then let's cut one of them in half. So we've quite a bit to remove here. Need to get these 9 chips off, remove those couple of jumper links, clear out various holes at the others. Let's just get cracking on. So we do have a few pins here that just didn't want to let go, but a little bit of fresh solder should soon get them released. So let's just see if this first chip here wants to come out. Look at that there. It's even hollowed out underneath. I don't much see the point in cutting one of these in half. In fact, let's just do it, will we? That's just a bit of plastic. Very fake. Okay, I've got an awful lot more to remove here. I'll do that, and then we'll be back to fit the new chips and take a look at what settings we need to apply for the jumpers. So that is all our fake cash removed. There they are there. At least they can go into the plastic recycling. But now we need to decide what we're going to fit. So this is the section out of the motherboard manual that describes the cache. This system board can support an optional 64, 128, 256, 512 or 1 megabyte of external write back direct mapped cache. Now, I've been doing a little bit of research on it, and it seems that 256K is probably the sweet spot for a board like this. So with that in mind, let's fit 1 megabyte, because why not? So for that then, we're going to need to configure our jumpers here and here. You can see I've already installed our little pin headers. So for 1024K, jumper 5, which is this one, I'm presuming that means we need to short pins 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, 7. That would be 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, 7. And then jumper 10, which is this one, needs shorted on pins 2, 3. So I'm assuming that is 1, 2, 3. A lot of assumptions being made here. Problem is I don't have a picture of the board that describes, say here for example, where pin 1 is, but I would assume that's it. And then jumpers 11, 12, 13, 14 also need shorted, and that is the next few along. (13) and 14. There we are. That last one there, jumper 36, that was shorted on the board anyway, just with a wee wire. I just thought I'd remove that and just fit a proper jumper on there, just to match the rest of it. So our cache then, these are ISSI chips, 128K by 8 and 10 nanosecond that I went for. I suppose that's just because these were the cheapest ones I could find, and it actually turned out to be the maximum that this board could support, 1 megabyte. So you can see the outline of the chip on the board with a little notch at one end. There's a notch on the end of the chip, and they will just drop in there like that. Now yes, I probably should fit sockets here, but I don't have any the right size, and they're actually quite hard to find a dip socket that size. So I think I'm just going to put these chips direct onto the board to solder them in place. They all are tested and working, supposedly anyway, so hopefully there won't be any issues. So it's very possible these might actually be new old stock. There's no sign of wear on them, not really anyway. Definitely have never been installed in a board before. They might have been installed in a socket before, albeit there's not even any scratches on the legs. And the other thing that makes me think that they might be new is the fact that the pins on them are quite spread out at the bottom, and they'll not just drop into place here on the board. What we need to do is bend these all in slightly to make it fit. And to bend those legs in, all you need to do is just rest it against your tabletop like that, lift it up so it's on the legs slightly, and then just push. All you're doing is bending them. And then with the chip in place, all we're going to do is just solder either ends, opposite corners. That will just hold it. Then we can turn over just to check that the chip is sitting flat. They are quite a tight fit in there anyway, so I don't expect it to move, but always worth just to do opposite corners, check it's flat, then you can do the rest. Where's my fume extractor? That's much better. So just check again that the chip is flat. Yep, that looks fine. That's all the cache installed. Let's reassemble the machine and see if it works. So I've got the system partly reassembled. Didn't bother with the sound card or network card. Just have our graphics card in here and the Super I/O card. Let's see if this is going to work. So still posts, that's good. Counting up the memory. Detects the hard drive. And what's happening? It seems as if the system has crashed because our keyboard lights are not responding. Okay, let's go into the BIOS. If we just bring up that page from the manual again, it says there under some cache memory considerations that for single bank cache installations, albeit we're not using single bank, but let's just try this anyway. So in advanced chipset, we want to change that from enable to disable, and we want to change that to 3222. And that apparently is to ensure proper operation. Worth a try anyway. Yeah, it just hangs again. So back into the BIOS one more time because I just want to try this. Just to make sure we haven't damaged anything on this motherboard. I just want to disable the external cache and see if she still boots that way. Yeah, straight away. Albeit it's not booting off the hard drive. Don't really know why, as everything's connected up right. I suppose it might just have lost its settings, having the power disconnected for so long. Time to do a bit of thinking. I suppose we might have a bad cache chip. Sort of wish I had a fit sockets in there now. Oh well. Right, we're possibly getting somewhere. I have changed the jumper settings for the cache, so we are just using a single bank and only 512K. When we power up now, you can see the system tries to boot and it even tells us we have 512K of cache memory. So that's making me think then that there's a bad cache chip in that other bank. 4 chips, one of them must be bad. I do have one more cache chip here, so hopefully it is just one bad chip in there and this one will solve our problem. But I suppose it's just going to have to be trial and error. I'm just going to have to remove them one at a time and try this chip in place. I probably should fit sockets, shouldn't I? Or we're going to wind up making a mess of the board, soldering and desoldering over and over again. Unfortunately, I don't have any 32-pin sockets suitable for this. And as I said earlier, they seem to be near enough impossible to find. I do have plenty of shorter sockets though, so I suppose we'll just fit those and cut them up to suit. That will have to do. So the board works just with a single bank of cache. These are labelled 0 and 1. So I'd like to think that a single bank of cache is bank 0 and that our problem is one of these four. So what I'm going to do is just fit two 16-pin sockets in the position of each of these, and that will let us swap out to the other spare cache chip we have nice and easy, and then hopefully we'll get this up and going. Unfortunately, I only have enough 16-pin sockets just to do these. I'll maybe see about getting some more and just populate these with sockets as well, albeit if we get it working. There's probably no reason to, really. Right, get them removed, get sockets on, and get to testing. So I've been playing with this for quite a while and unfortunately not getting anywhere fast. I have swapped out our cache along here and it doesn't make any difference. So either we have multiple bad cache chips here, I would say the odds of that is fairly slim, or there's something else going on. I did notice that our BIOS is dated 1994 and I have found a slightly newer BIOS for this board dated 95. That's really going to be the last roll of the dice at the minute. I'm going to update the BIOS and see if that makes the difference. So as with everything, nothing is ever simple. I have tried 5 different AMI flash tools to try and update this BIOS and none of them will work with it. And after a bit more googling, I did find a thread over on Vga's that would suggest that it's not possible to write to this BIOS on the board. Instead, we need to get a new EEPROM and write it with an EEPROM programmer. Oh well, I don't have one of those, so this is going to have to wait for some time in the future. For now, all we can do is put up with our 512K, which to be honest with you is more than enough. So I'm going to build this machine back up and then we'll do some testing to see just how much faster it actually is. Okay, we're all back together. Let's put her through her paces. And to keep this simple, I'm just going to boot to command prompt only, and then we can run the tests from there. So let's just go into our Barks folder again. I really need to fix this keyboard. And we'll run that NSSI software. Press P to get information on our processor, and still only 8K of level 1 cache, no level 2 cache. Strange. I wonder maybe does this software just not pick up level 2 cache if it's on the motherboard. Let's run cache check 7 again. So it reports that our cache is now 512K, but it still says if you think you have L2 cache, you might have fake cache chips. Strange it's reporting the total cache is 512, because if it was saying it all together, would it not be 520? There's 8K on the processor. I wonder if we maybe do need that BIOS update for this machine. And our obviously patched BIOS that's in there is causing problems. Let's just see out of interest if we jump back into the BIOS and disable that external cache. And then if we run cache check again, I just want to see if it's going to go back to just seeing the 8K of L1 cache on the processor. And yes, it does. Right, so my thinking is definitely something funny going on with that BIOS. But we are seeing a difference between 8K and 512. So let's run a few DOS benchmarks and let's see if there is any noticeable difference in performance. So the first test we're running here is Vga Benchmark version 1.0C, cache enabled on the left and cache disabled on the right. Cache enabled 46.2 frames per second, cache disabled just 42. Next test then, PC Player Benchmark. Looks very similar watching it. And cache enabled is marginally faster, just 1 frame per second in it. How about the Doom time demo? Just in low settings, so we can run through it quickly. Two of them were started at exactly the same time. Which one is going to get finished first? And yep, cache enabled is the faster again, as you would expect. It's maybe not just as big of an improvement as I was hoping. So how about one more test, and let's make it a real world test with a full game, Duke Nukem 3D. So we'll just let it roll through the titles and load into the demo. The cache is going to be quicker, but what I want to see is, does it make it any more playable? If you remember back to when we put this machine together initially, the performance of this game was not great, and that is what we should see on the right hand side here. Just intrigued to know if what's going to happen on the left will be any smoother. And yeah, straight away I would say it's marginally quicker. Still does seem to stutter a bit, but maybe just not as bad. And I dare say if we can get the BIOS sorted out and get this cache working properly, we might get a bit more performance out of this again. Well, there we are. Tried installing 1 megabyte of real cache, ended up with 512k of it working. Maybe. I'm not convinced it's working properly. There was a slight speed boost seen in the benchmarks with that cache enabled. I would have expected it to be slightly better though. And I'm putting it down to the BIOS, which I think needs to be updated, as obviously the BIOS in this machine has been patched to display that fake 256k of L2 cache. And when we put the real chips in there, I just don't think it's working properly. That does present the problem though. I have no facility to burn myself a new cache chip to stick in here, so it'll just have to wait until I can get myself one of those programmers. But that's it for now. Not all the way there, but I think we have made some progress. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up, as it does help the channel. If you have any ideas for how I could get the rest of the cache working, or another means that I could use to update that BIOS, please let me know in the comments below. But that's it for now, and I'll see you next time.